NCGA had a relationship with Spyglass Hill. And as a consequence, they had their meeting offices in the clubhouse there, and they had the long-term relationship with a leasehold by the founding members, which eventually expired after 50 years. But they looked ahead and they said, this is working, but we would like to have our own golf course. And so they had a long negotiation with the ownership then and the manager of Pebble Beach Corporation to buy some land at a time after the Coastal Commission went into effect that housing was not being allowed to be built along the entire coast of California, but particularly in Pebble Beach. So it was a great deal for both parties at the time. In order to fund that, they actually attached a fee to everybody in the NCGA. I forget the amount of money it is. You can look it up, maybe $5 a year or 10 something, for the gin handicap system. And over a period of years, that fund built up so they could pay for the land and the beginning of the construction of the golf course. Enter the fact that they want to hire a golf architect. So they they put out an RFP to us, Jack Nicholas, Fazio, were some of the name architects and some local architects, not as well known. And they had interviews scheduled, and I attended that interview in the late 70s and so on. It was on a Tuesday, if I remember correctly. It could have been a Wednesday, but it was in early week, and it was in the summer. And and when I got there, I went into the what was now the Club 19 and talked to the bartender whom I knew, having worked there with my dad a little bit at Spyglass and having just been an NCGA player. And he said, "Oh, I understand you're here for the interview. Well, these guys come in here and they're staying at the lodge, but they come to my bar and they don't go out to the site." And I said, "Thank you for the advice. I'll see you later. Don't you want a drink?" I said, "No." I went out and I walked the site in the woods, which was luff material and scraggly and decomposed granite here and there, and the woods and in the deep woods, and came back, spent the night, got up for my interview, and there was John Zoller was not then a part of it. Yes, he was there. He was. There was a superintendent from Fresno. There was Bob Hanna, and there were other well-known people from the NCJ, about a committee of maybe 5 or 6 people, and they asked questions, the normal ones, and then they said, "Well, what is your main concern about this site?" I said, "The actual soil type." And I took out of my pocket in my jacket, I pulled out the soil I had taken the night before from the soil and put it on the table in front of them. I said, "I walked the site last night as much as I could among the trees and surveyed the soil. You have not good soil here." To which the Fresno superintendent said, "You're the first person who actually gets it." So that's what happened in the interview. And later on, we were awarded the project. The vote came our way, and that was a big, big deal to have the opportunity to work in Pebble Beach for the NCGA in our career at that time was extremely important. So we put everything we had into it uh, in our design. John Zoller was the leader for the NCGA. He was then the executive director, and he had very clear visions of what he liked in a championship course. What he liked is elevated greens, Augusta style. And he had done work with my father and me, helping him at Eugene Country Club a decade earlier. So we had a working relationship there, and which carried forward. So it was easy, but he was clearly directing on behalf of the NCGA the design elements for a championship course upon which the NCGA would conduct its championships and tournaments. So that was the goal. We did that. We opened up the forest. We added 2 lakes, one in the area of number 5 hole, which is no longer there, and again, a 10th hole as reservoirs. The biggest problem was getting the plan approved by the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission at that time was like Chile. It was a long, thin country with absolute power. I turn this off. Sorry. And so the uh, commission was there was an attorney from Salinas, and I forget his name, on the board. He thought it would be pro forma going before the commission. At that time, I was on the Parks Commission, and I said, be very careful. The Coastal Commission is nothing pro forma. You may be surprised. Be prepared for questions you're not expecting. And and he went before the Coastal Commission, and it was a very close vote, like 4-3 or something, and he was completely shocked. So they had to make some concessions, which I gave them the not concessions, but some conditions to the permits from the Coastal Commission, which was that they had to provide nesting areas in one of the lakes so that the foxes and other animals couldn't get at the eggs of the birds laying there. And they also had to expand the dwarf cypress tree protection area, which at that time was 10, 11, the parallel to what was then the 12th tee, which is a dogleg right, sharp dogleg right, short par five. And so that's why the dogleg was a sharp dogleg and not a very popular hole. So those were the kinds of things that went into the design, which were external to the needs of the golf course. And then we got Greenscape, a company that we owned and built and worked with Bud Sexton, who was very close to John Zoller, to actually do the construction work. And over time, we built the original golf course and opened it. It was a something new, an inland championship golf course, unlike Pebble Beach or Spyglass Hill at the time, or Cypress, which was private. And basically the NCGA achieved its goals to provide a venue for its tournaments and championships, and we were very pleased to be part of it.
And Bobby, what about when you returned in 2014? Can you talk a little bit about what the improvements you made there?
Well, actually, we returned sooner. There had been discussion to renovate the course. As you mentioned earlier, it's 40 years old, and like anything else, a house needs paint, and golf courses need renovation, particularly depending how they were maintained. And we give full credit to the maintenance staff and particularly the superintendents who get up every morning at 5 in the morning and come out and mow the greens and mow the golf course and so on. But over time, certain conditions were um, important and had changed, such as water usage. As you know, Pebble Beach now uses reclaimed water. Buying water from the California Water Department was expensive, but also constrained by the amount of water. And so all the golf courses converted to a reclaimed water system. And as such, we had to rethink the amount of turfed area. So that was one constraint. It gave us a second chance to, how would I put it, pop the hills at Poppy Hills. As I said earlier, we built a lot of the mounds and greens and tees up in the air above the natural sites. Here we brought them down on the ground. We eliminated the lake on number five entirely and moved the 10th hole up from the lake area where it was directly behind it, say Augusta sort of 15 style, up on the hill above it, and reversed the par three. So we didn't. So the par three was surrounded by bunkers, but now you no longer had the par five short, sharply dogleg par five, which was unpopular, and made number 12 a par four by taking the tee behind and to the left of the green on 10 and making a short, relatively short, modest par four, but very strictly bunkered in part so that it would keep people from hitting the ball into the door cypress protected area on the far right, where there was also a cart path. And Bruce can speak to this a lot. Bruce had a lot to do with the dialogue to get it through, not the Council Commission, but the county planning department at that time, which was a process which was required to do any kind of construction. In the meantime, the original plan had been laid out for the Pebble Beach company with Jack Marshall, who was then in charge of it, with real estate in mind at a future date. And so that real estate had not been fully implemented, maybe a house here and there on the left side of what is 10 and 15 Green. In that area, there was a couple of houses built, but they've been very aggressive and built out larger houses since that time. So we knew that was coming, and we wanted to protect those houses from errant golf balls. And that's partly why the golf course is a core golf course, so that the players can play away from the out of bounds, which is where the houses are, inland, and they might hit it across on, say, 14 into the woods or even toward the 15 area,
Mm-hmm.
but not hit it left into a house. So those considerations were taken into account in the remodeling or renovation. We slightly rerouted the course. As I mentioned, eliminated the lake on 5, made that a long par 4, which is a stern hole, and it plays to a slightly fall away green. Redid all the greens, lowered them, made them more accessible, and increased the pin positions on number 9. There's one thing left to be done on the actual plan. The creek on the left side of number 9 is an actual drainage area, which needs to drain. It's technically not functioning right because it spills the way it had been constructed originally and has been left. It drains backwards on the normal flow of water, which is right to left. That's still a remaining minor issue to make sure that hazard functions naturally as a drainage area in the wintertime. But other than that, we're very proud of it. There's one other technical point that I would like to see. Number 10 now is a longer par 5, but the tee was lowered and the waste areas that were added to reduce the turfed
Mm-hmm.
areas, which are to reduce water consumption, which was a big deal, big criteria, is makes the tee shot blind, semi-blind, but more importantly, you don't see the right-hand bunker. And if you're playing at the first time at Poppy Hills, you don't know this. It's a public golf course. So we have recommended a small bunker higher up or reaching the right-hand fairway bunker so it's visible to the player. We don't like blind bunkers. We don't like blind lakes off the tee. And other than those two little minor things, it's a great golf course. We think it's, been tweaked slightly to get better pin positions. And number 2 in green was built about 4 times to get that one, so it functioned well. But
Mm-hmm.
what are you guys thinking? What are you hearing from the players?
Nothing. Great reviews since the everything that was done back 20 when it reopened in 2014. Yeah, I don't. I mean, we've hosted numerous championships since the redo. Um, uh, Nothing but positive
Yeah,
reviews,
I
if
heard I
anything.
heard from people who played in it, like let's see, I'm trying to think of some of the tournament, some of the better balls tournaments and or
Yeah.
seniors. Everybody, by the way, first thing that happens to a golf architect is we are on defense. The players are on offense. They're attacking the course. We're like goalkeepers. We're setting up the defenses, the hazards. That's our technical skill.
Hmm.
In innings and in football, you have baseball and downs. In golf, you have the golfer and you have the golf architect in each who's a defender. So when people don't win their matches, the first person they talk to is us and say, that hole number 12, I hit it the wrong this and that one, and we listen carefully. If it's an overwhelming opinion that the land is not reacting fairly, we tweak it. But for the most part, uh, the players when they win, they're very happy
Yeah.
to take full credit.
True. And Bobby, so
Yeah.
What lessons did you learn from your father when it came to golf course design?
Well, the first thing is I learned the game from him. I was born into a golfing family, and after World War II, people were relaxing. If you were in a boating family, you went boating. If you were in a hiking family, you went hiking. If you were in a ski family, which was new at that time, maybe skiing. So when we would go somewhere together as a family, we would drive a long time, maybe end up at Pinehurst, and my brother Reese and he's younger, we
Yeah.
would go out with my dad and play golf. We were kids, 12, 10 years old, and my dad would say, "Oh, you don't have to play from these tees. I'm going to hit the ball and you play from there. One day they'll put forward tees for families." So he would talk like that. He was always thinking about ahead about how to make the course playable for everyone, not
Mhm.
just championship length, although he's known for that as the Open Doctor. Um, and that's one aspect. In terms of design, always follow the land. The land is your plan. And I
Mm.
said, what do you mean, Bobby? P- Walk the land. When you play golf, you walk. Now, this is before golf carts. You walk. And I said, yes. Well, do you feel the land when you walk? I said, yes. Well, that's the way the land drains. Drainage is everything. It has to be dry in order to have the ball have a dry lie so you can hit it. So you follow the land and always let the land drain way it wants to naturally and don't move it around. That's been transformed in the, let's say, landscape architectural schools in Mississippi or Michigan State to change the land. And so Spyglass Hill was very natural. It's what was there was there. All we built was greens, tees, and bunkers. And whereas Poppy Hills was more changed the land a little bit, particularly because they wanted to elevate the targets. And now what we've done is bring the in 2012 the original concept of my father's and mine back where the golf course is literally sitting on the natural land for the most part. So I would say let the land be your guide and always let the land dictate to you. And the way you do that is by walking it and feeling it. Some people say, how do you design? Do you use a pen? Do you use a computer? I said, no, I use my feet.
And do you have any favorite holes at Poppy Hills that you still love to this day?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Yeah. We revised the strategy quite a bit on holes. Well, six is an interesting par three, but seven we changed quite a bit from a penal type hole to a more widening hole. Remember now, Lynn Nelson was at the head of the NCGA at that time, and she was and she played for San Jose State on their team. She was very interested in women's championship golf. So we spent a lot of time listening to Lynn and actually asked her to help us locate the right location for women's championship tees, which are there, for example, on the far left off of number one.
Yeah.
So that was uh, a change too, is to have the women competitive players advise us where they best thought the hole began, even though they were playing the hole, which was designed essentially for men, single-digit players. Uh, so so that happened at Century World, where we first got people to hit the ball, women to hit the ball backwards from the shaped green to a pattern using a 5 iron if the normal shot into that green was a 5 iron on a still day. And then from that point, give them an arc, and they would choose the tee. The women pro at that time uh, was there. So that was a new concept in the changing that comes to my mind. In terms of favorite holes, um, yeah, I kind of like number nine um,
Yeah.
because it's complex. It has many options. We had a central bunker. Now you can play at the green in two. But again,
Mhm.
that creek is so important as a hazard, like Augusta, that
Mhm.
it means it matters.
Stones.
Other favorite holes. Two was a nemesis hole. It was a great par three, but you couldn't hold the green. It went back into the creek. So we made a larger green, but then broke it up with contour, and that didn't work. It was like playing the two greens. If you got the wrong side of the green, had to hit over CB McDonald type contours. CB McDonald was the first golf architect in America. He learned to play at St. Andrews University and was there as a student in the 1890s. And he went out and replicated the famous features of some of the greens, like the Redan at North Berwick. So he would just lay out the course. As I recall, he hooked the ball, so all the holes were dogleg lefts. Guess who won the club championship every year?
Yeah.
That's called that's called gerrymandering the golf course like a politician.
But we have a map here at Poppy Hills that has number two actually with water, with a pond hazard, I guess.
Hmm.
And Bruce has seen that map and said that's true. At one point, very early, apparently, there was some plans with water there, but
That's
it never
correct.
happened.
Yeah.
Really? Why
Hmm.
why didn't that happen? It just because
Well,
of coastal commission stuff or
no, not because of them. No,
yeah.
I mean, golf architecture is collaborative. The unsung heroes themselves are the bulldozer operators and the green superintendent. They have a lot to say about technical matters. And again, the most important thing is drainage. And
Mm,
we have Ed Tano, who's California, worked in state parks. He was an extraordinarily great shaper. And he was the son of a Dr. Tano who beat I was a member of Menlo Country Club. He beat me in the club championship finals two or three times. If I shot 70, he shot 68. So there you go. At Menlo in the old days. Anyway, he was our dentist and he said, I got this son who wants to get back out of the state parks service. And so I said, so we hired him and trained him to be a shaper. Number one thing about Ed Tano, he's about to retire now, is he would always have a hand level with him in his pocket, and he would check in the dirt for how the green drained. And there's drainage, but it's all about getting water to drain. That's what the shapers do. And the superintendents, they're mostly interested in cutting lines and not scalping them and not getting the contours on the greens too severe. And they would comment on it. So it's a collaborative effort. And these people, we work together as a team. It
mm,
was, Bruce with me and Mike Gorman on the remodel.
mm,
As I mentioned, John Zoller and the Shapers.
mm,
It was, we just walked out there in the dirt. And Ron Reed was there, very active.
mhm.
Um, and so, I think of it as a team effort.
Uh, I personally, I have got one other question that came to my mind. You have mentioned in the past how progressive the NCGA is. How would you describe, yeah, in your own words again, kind of just how great the NCGA has been as a golf association?
Well, I come from New York area. As I mentioned, I was runner-up in the Metropolitan New Jersey, New York juniors and New Jersey State Junior Champion. And so the Metropolitan Golf Association was considered at that time the most competitive golf association. Best tournaments were played there by the best players, amateur, Metropolitan Open, the Eisenhower Triangle matches, etc. Chicago Golf Association is excellent. Florida was really not really organized. A lot of golf courses there, but everybody had left by Easter. They weren't there in the summer. They'd gone back north. So when I got to California and became involved with the Northern California Golf Association, they too were very competitive. They wanted to create competitive tournaments, and they had very good players. Um, Maybe not at the intensity of New York, where everything is competitive, a little bit more friendly. And yet they were very analytical. When I first played in the NCGA amateur on Spyglass, I think I shot 84, 78, and almost qualified. Maybe I did qualify and lost the first round. I can't remember, but it was just that hard. It was really hard, a very stern test. So that was progressive to in fact have its own golf course, although it was
Mm,
leased from Pebble Beach Company. That was unique. Later on, the USGA, when it moved to Far Hills, considered having a golf course there and never was able to do it.
mm,
Only the progressive NCGA. Now he's fast forward to Gin and the handicap system. That was NCGA, and the USGA adopted it. And you fast forward to now Poppy Hills from the Spyglass Day era, and you own your own golf course. And now Poppy Ridge, you own two golf courses. That no other golf association does this, although they talk about it.
Mhm.
That's really progressive. And the most recent progressive thing is intellectual. We live in the Silicon Valley, and the Silicon Valley is all about computer science and chips. And chips in the Silicon Valley are not short little 8 irons around the green. They are chips in a computer. So people literally go to cocktail parties and we're talking about chips and we don't know what we're talking about the wrong thing or the opposite thing from each other. So having said that, the most progressive thing that happened lately is the Birdie Act. The Birdie Act is something that the American Society of Golf Course Architects has sponsored, and the NCGA is supporting as an association to protect the intellectual property of their own golf course and all their golf courses from IP, from AI. I mean, so that what is can happen is LiDAR can fly over any golf course and remap it and then turn it into a game and play it indoors in the cold days in Idaho or Massachusetts and so on. And that's becoming more and more important that the actual ownership of the design remains with the designer and the owners of those golf courses. And that act is being reintroduced in Congress now to correct a mistake. It's not a new right. The structural architects, building architects, AIA architects, when they amended the Copyright Act of 1970s, added in that they would get protection for their buildings and for the architects of them, the designers of them, but specifically excluded landscape architects. Why? They didn't like architect being people who didn't study steel strengths and math, and it was just a little kind of bickering. And it's in the act. So all we're doing is removing those three words and adding and golf course architecture, and that's fundamental because otherwise AI will own everything and sell it back to the NCGA.